Okay, we're going to go ahead and welcome everybody to the 2023 New Assessment Director webinar. Today, by the end of today, by the end of our 3 hours, you're going to feel like you've been given a whole bunch of information, and you may be a little bit surprised at all the stuff you're about to learn today. We want to reassure you that today is a high-level experience to just get you familiar with all the different assessments that if you're an assessment director, you'll be in charge of making sure get administered correctly, and that you have the information that you need for that. And so you'll be able to see that it's, how we communicate with you. We want to make sure you know that we will be sending information out to you weekly in assessment director memos that you'll want to read. As well as we have a monthly AD meeting, and we'll be discussing that when we get to the communication slides. So what we would like you to do, though, is introduce yourself by typing your first and last name and the district or school that you support, and one thing that you hope to learn today. And that way we know who you are. You also may want to go up and click and make sure that we have your first and last name in your name for the workshop, because we are recording this, and it's one way we also take roll, since if you registered, you get credit for attending today. And while everyone's taking a minute to introduce themselves, we're going to go ahead and have the assessment section introduce themselves. I'm going to start, and then we'll have Darren. I'm Kim Rathke. I am the test administration and data coordinator. I oversee the systems team and Utah Compose. And go ahead, Darren, and then I'll call out whoever I see on top. And we'll have Darren Nielsen go ahead and introduce himself, and we'll move around.
Okay, thank you, Kim. And good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today, even if it is just virtually. My name is Darren Nielsen. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Student Learning for the Utah State Board of Education, and also get the privilege of working as a director for the assessment accountability team. So it's a privilege to be able to work with these fine people. I'm hopeful and high expectations that at the end of today's meeting, you'll feel like your time with us today has been well spent. While it will likely feel like you've had a fire hose pointed at you, we'll acknowledge that up front, because there's so many requirements and actions related to state assessment. I hope that you'll walk away with confidence that you know who to contact if you have questions, that you're able to access resources that have been provided to, again, help support you in your work with your LEA in relationship to statewide assessments, and that you feel comfortable reaching out to any member of this team for questions that you might have. And finally, we hope that you'll leave this meeting with an interest in joining us each month for our assessment director meetings, and that you'll have excitement and interest in our AD memos that come out on a weekly basis that are all designed to support you in the work that you do. So thank you very much for your commitment to the students in your community.
The next person I see is Jessica.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Wilhelm, and I am the Secondary Special Education Assessment Specialist. I work with our Utah Aspire Plus and ACT assessments for our high school students.
And then I see Emily.
Emily Ng, Program Specialist here at the State Board of Education in the Assessment Department. I am the direct support for Kim Rathke and her team, and I also help with Braille and YouTube channel, all things technical. So happy to be here, and let me know if you have any questions.
Sydney.
Hi, I'm Sydney Carter. I'm the Assessment Development Coordinator, and it's nice to see many familiar names in the chat and see lots of people that are longtime ADs, as well as all of the new folks. Welcome. My team and I work on any of the development of any of our state-mandated assessments, so anything from Peep, Keep, Acadience, Reading, Math, Rise, UA+. So nice to see all of you.
Megan.
Good morning. I'm Megan Lopez, and I, goodness, what do I do? Wida Assessment with Ann Michelle Neal, and then also secondary English Language Arts Assessment, and then also co-program management with Whitney Grant over our Assessment to Achievement project. Welcome.
Whitney Grant.
Good morning. My name is Whitney Grant. I'm the secondary math assessment specialist. I also assist with Acadience math and then work with Megan on our Assessment to Achievement program.
Angela, you're up.
Thank you. Hi, Angela Battaglia. I'm the NAICS State Coordinator. I oversee all the national and international assessments.
I see Teresa next.
Good morning. I am Teresa McIntyre. I am over elementary language arts assessment. So that includes the Peep, the Keep, the Acadience reading, and RISE grades 3 through 5.
Jared.
Good morning. I'm Jared Wright, Elementary Math and Science Assessment Specialist. I work with elementary assessments in science and math, grades 3 through 5, and then I help Teresa also with Keep and Peep and Acadience math.
Elise. Elise, you're up.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Mute didn't come off when I clicked. Good morning. I am the Test Administration and Formative Assessment Specialist with USBE. I work with RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, UTIPS, and the Apple Test for Dual Immersion Schools.
Maureen. You're up, Maureen.
Hello, I am Maureen Rushing. I am the Assessment Data Specialist. I have been since Monday. I am in charge of rostering for most of the assessments we have.
Thank you. And I don't think I'm missing anyone else. Scott Ross Kelly, who is our secondary science specialist and who oversees ACT, is on annual leave this week. And Michelle Neal is the same. And if I miss somebody, you guys, I'm not seeing pictures. So,
hi, this is
Tracy.
This is Teresa with an H.
Oh, we're not going to have everybody out there introducing. We're just doing you as people. So, but thank you. I'm Tracy. I forgot you.
That's okay. I'm used to it, Kim. So I'm Tracy Gooley, and I'm the Special Education Assessment Specialist. So I oversee all of our elementary and early childhood assessments, accommodations, and accessibility. And then I am the main point of contact for alternate assessments for students with significant cognitive disabilities.
Thanks, Tracy. I only missed you because your camera was off. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go check. Did I miss anybody else from USBE? Okay, I didn't think. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. We need everybody to mute just to make sure, and we're going to go ahead. We are recording this, just so you're aware. We did send you the link, the PDF of the presentation as well. So we encourage you to take notes if you need to. Make sure you write down your questions. So that as we're working through the information, we want to be able to help you. So I appreciate everybody who's introduced themselves in the chat. So we start to make connections. Some of you I know are long-term ADs who like to just come in and check in because you miss us all summer, and now we're all here back together. Okay. So one of the things, like we said earlier, is to type your questions in the chat, or feel free to come off mute to share. There will be multiple breaks throughout this webinar to ask questions and to update your calendars with critical dates. So you can choose to do your calendaring however you want to, but we strongly encourage you to at least write the dates down. You will get these dates multiple times throughout the year. It's not like you're never going to get reminded of them. But sometimes at the beginning of the school year when you're trying to plan for everything, It's a really good time to kind of look and make sure that you're aware of, especially the things that you need to take care of in the next 2 months, because as you probably figured out by now, it's a critical time of the year. So our learning intentions and success criteria today is we're really hoping to just familiarize you with the statewide assessment policies and general procedures. We're going to offer you an overview about the statewide assessments, each of the statewide assessment systems, so that you can understand your role as an assessment director or someone who supports assessment in your LEAs. And we're also, like we've already started, to provide you with contact information and those calendar dates. And by the end, you're probably going to understand a little bit more about your role, particularly in disseminating and providing information to the educators. That's one of the most important roles that you have. And that is when we give you information and we ask you to send it down to, all the way down to the teacher level. Your life and our lives are always much better if you do that. And you're going to learn a lot of acronyms today. It is an alphabet soup in education, so be prepared for that. We want to make sure you're in the loop. Like we said, we make sure we give you a lot of communication. We send out a weekly assessment memo that you'll get that will be titled from Darren and Amy Magruder, who is his administrative assistant. You'll want to make sure that you look for Amy's name and make sure that you have whitelisted her email address if you haven't, so that you can make sure that it's added to your allow list. You also want to double check if you did not get information about this through an AD memo. You want to make sure that you reach out to Amy and so that she can add you to the listserv. And we have had a lot of turnover. A lot of people are moved in and out or retired, or, if you've added people. Anybody who's involved in supporting assessment, particularly at a district level or, a higher, administrative level, probably should be on the listserv, because that saves a lot of time in communicating. We do have a website. We have a director website, and we also have a YouTube channel, which is, you will want to subscribe to that, because we record all of our trainings, meetings, and workshops, and we post those so that you can go back and refer to them at any time. We also timestamp them, so they're something that you can just scroll quickly to find. If you notice on the slides in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little notation, like it'll say introduction or the assessment system that we're talking about. So if you're looking for that, that's one way that we set those timestamps, if you wondered about that. A couple of things we want to be aware of, you want to be aware of, and that there is a vocabulary to assessment. There are basically 4 types of assessments that USBE offers. One of them are our formative tools. It's a process that occurs during instruction, and it's basically the process that both teachers and students work together on to make sure that students are understanding what they're, actually learning what they're being taught. Benchmark assessments are that periodic check of mastery. There are benchmark assessments for Acadience, for RISE and Utah Aspire Plus, and alternate benchmarks as well. There is an interim test which is available for RISE for ELA and math, which is predictive of RISE summative, and it basically is how students would do if they took that summative test that day or in that period of time when you did the test. And then, of course, summative test, which is the student proficient on assessed standards, and it's used for program review and accountability. Here's the tasks that you want to be aware of. This is kind of a high-level task. Next week in our new first AD meeting of the year, which will be August 18th at 9 o'clock. It's both in-person or a hybrid. We will be providing you with a month-by-month high-level, like, here's the things that happen each month. And we'll be providing that to you next week, rather than doing it 2 weeks in a row. I decided to just do it at the AD meeting because it's a new resource that we're providing. So this is basically the task that you need, that we highly recommend. You need to make sure that you are verifying and updating access and roles for your personnel and your assessment systems. This is the time of year when everybody needs to make sure that they have access to whatever assessment they need. They will be getting password changes from CAI for RISE, for the high school benchmarks, all of those processes that happen. happen now, and you want to remind everyone that they do need to go in. Everyone will be sent password change requests. Make sure that everybody's logged in and can get access to what they need. One of the most important tasks that you have that's due by September 15th is to submit your testing plan, which I will be going over. And we've also provided the link in the AD memo for this week already. That is due by September 15th. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. You also want to know, and for some of you, you are this person, but for some of you, you're not. But you want to know who your LEA, IT, and Utricks and data manager personnel are. Tracy will and Jessica will talk about the fact you also want to know who your special education directors are, so that you can provide information to them as well. You want to make sure you're going to need to train the personnel who are going to be administering assessments on testing, on the testing ethics policy, and you'll have to maintain attendance records, so we'll talk about that. You want to make sure you read your weekly AD memos and make sure you're receiving them. If you're not getting communication from us by now, please make sure you send either me or Amy an email, and we will make sure to get you added. You also want to make sure you try and attend our AD meetings, either in person. We offer them in person and or virtually by webinar. And those are held every month, the third Thursday of every month, if I've got the date right. And then you want to work with your LEA personnel to make sure they have the pertinent information related to assessments. Sounds simple. It's a lot of work. There are purposes for the administration of statewide assessments, and these are the basic purposes. And one reason we highlight that is because in the testing ethics policy, we also ask everyone who completes the testing ethics policy to actually review and understand the purpose for assessment. And basically, it's to evaluate information and various levels of proficiency for students. It's also used to identify the need for additional resources or to reallocate educational resources, and to improve existing and to ensure educational opportunities for all students and to improve your existing programs. The testing plan information that I talked about earlier, this slide is really valuable. This information is also with the link in the AD memo. If it is highlighted, the testing plan submission link is the live link that goes to the survey that you complete. That's due by September 15th. Now, one thing to remember is I wouldn't just click on it and just start trying to fill it out. I would prepare it first. So you're going to need the contact information for both yourself and any additional staff who assist you with assessment responsibilities so that we have really current contact information. And you will need to know the dates that you're going to administer all the applicable statewide tests. And it just depends on the level of school that you have as to which tests you need to complete. The good news is we've really gotten good with Qualtrics. And so if you don't administer one of these assessments and you type no, it just takes you to the next question. You also need to make sure that you provide us with the dates of your training plan for the testing ethics policy. That includes the date when the training is going to be provided to educators and paraprofessionals. And you also want to include in your plan when you're going to include training on how to use the assessment results. And you definitely want to print or save your survey results. And I know Amy we've discovered that we can also, I think it will email you your survey results as well. But this is our first year to try that. So we're hoping that that works. But we highly recommend that you print it. When you get to the end, you can print and save it. And then you already have it for the whole year so you know what you provided. The testing ethics is one of the most essential things that we have to do, which is why we only have a few rules around here, but we don't enforce them. The testing ethics training, it is supported by Board Rule R277404, and that you need to use the USPE testing ethics policy to provide training for all assessment administrators and proctors. It has to be accomplished yearly. You want to make sure that you don't forget to include people like your special educators and your TDIs. They sometimes get left out, and they have a special role with providing accommodated assessments. And you want to make sure you do that. Now, the board this year requested numerous changes to some of the policies. Particularly, we added all the times to the parental exclusion form. And our testing ethics Normally you'd have a link right to the training, but it hasn't been posted yet to the USBE website. It is with the web team right now. I'm hoping it's going to show up by, tomorrow at the latest. We will be providing the link. It will be right on the USBE website, and I will be sending it out in the USBE AD memo for next week, and we will talk about it again next week during the Thursday AD meeting. But there is a testing ethics training that we provide, as well as updates to the standard test administration and testing ethics policy, as well as the signature form that teachers need to sign, which has also been updated. So if you're using, you need to use the 2023 form this year, because our 277515 was repealed and replaced with 2 other pieces of legislation. So when the teachers sign, they need to understand that they're signing a new form, which has to be signed yearly. And also the parental exclusion form, if you're using it, it has also been updated. So if you have an LEA specific form which is required to use all of the information on our form, you're going to need to update that to provide the training time, the testing times. And this is the parental exclusion form as well. So that's one of the things I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of, that as soon as we get that posted, we will be sending out the links to everyone so that you have it. And we know it's a little bit delayed, but I wanted to make it sure everybody's aware of. Also, one suggestion that we have for you is that many teachers at this time of the year have numerous things that they have to get done. There's the bloodborne pathogens training and safety training and all of that. If you're, administering PEEP and KEEP, and your Apple, testing ethics needs to be provided to any teacher who's administering those tests right away. But we also suggest that you probably do a follow-up training right before the summative tests occur as well. It's a good refresher course, so that it's not, even though the legislation says it's once a year, we highly recommend, based on questions that we get often from teachers and principals, that you suggest that maybe they review it again. It may not have to be as formal as your original training, but it's a good idea to have everybody refresh that. And it is required for anyone who's new, who is coming back in, or a new employee needs to go through that as well, especially if they're going to be administering any statewide test. Any questions? And I cannot see the chat. So Emily, if there are any questions about policies, would you please let me know, and we can go ahead and answer them, or feel free to come off mute. For your calendar, you want to make sure that you have September 15th circled so that we can get your testing plan is due by that day. You want to write a note that you need to select dates or discuss this with some of the administrators in your LEA. Make sure you review your local parental exclusion forms if you're not using the one that's posted on the USBE website, because you will have to update that with the new information that the board has approved, as well as the local testing ethics signature form if you're using a different one than the one that's posted on the signature form. Are there any questions?
Kim, let me jump in. There might be a question when they see the parental exclusion form that's been updated by our Board of Education. The requirement for, or the statutory flexibility that allows an LEA to create their own parental exclusion form. The criteria that you'd want to consider as you compare the new form to your existing parental exclusion form to update it is really the focus on the assessments, the names of the assessments that are included. You'll notice this year's State Board of Education parental exclusion form includes significantly more information about testing time that are associated with each of the tests that a student has the opportunity to, or the parent has the opportunity to exclude their student from. As I read the statute, you wouldn't be required at the LA level to include the testing times on your own locally developed parental exclusion form, but you would want to be aligned with the names of the assessments that are included or not included in the State Board of Education parental exclusion form.
Emily, are there any questions in the chat?
No, there was just one comment from Teralyn. When do you anticipate the parental exclusion to post? And hopefully it'll get posted today. It's in the hands of our web team right now, so it's up to them. Yeah, hopefully today. Keep checking the assessment homepage. We have tabs there, one tab for the testing ethics, one tab for the parental exclusion, and both of those should be updated pretty soon here, so just keep checking.
The web team has had it since Monday, so we're just anxiously waiting for them to get it posted. And Carolyn, like I said, as soon as we get the links, we're checking it constantly. As soon as Emily gets the email that it's been posted, we probably will send out an AD memo just to let everyone know, because everyone's super anxious about it, as understandably so. So we will send that out as soon as we hear back from them. Okay, Maureen Rushing is our new assessment data specialist. She's been on the job since Monday, but she's been in the capable hands of Melissa Preziosi, our former assessment data specialist, who is now working for student data privacy. And she's going to go ahead and present these slides, and I'm going to support where she needs help. And so Maureen, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, I'm going to go off mute and go ahead and mute my camera, and we'll let you take it away.
All right, as Kim said, I'm the new assessment data specialist, Maureen Rushing. Not entirely new concepts for me. I've been working with the Salt Lake City School District on some of these, tasks. So I will just get started. Today I'm going to talk about these three subjects: student data privacy, our Utricks data exchange, and what would make a student eligible or ineligible for certain assessments. If you have any questions ever, you can get in touch with me about why a student isn't rostered for a test, and I'm happy to help you out with any of those issues. So next, this cartoon, this sort of illustrates the 5 stages of data privacy grief. My information has been shared. I'm mad. What can I do about it? And then finally, it's too hard, so I'm just going to accept it and go on with my life. They've got it already. We try to avoid this vicious cycle by protecting our students' privacy, so we stay out of this terrible cycle. So protecting student privacy is most important to us. We work with a lot of student information. We try to keep it protected. A good rule of thumb is the safe harbor. It's a federal standard for keeping privacy information safe. We just want to make sure that you cannot identify a student by information you're sharing unprotected. So a good rule of thumb is, if you can narrow down a student's identity, narrow something down to 3 students or less, then we don't want to share that information unprotected. So here's an example. If I'm playing a Guess Who game and I guess who is bald, are they bald in this game, it would narrow it down to 5 people. And that information would be safe to share unprotected. I can only narrow it down to 5 people. If I gave any information that was more specific, then we would have to encrypt that information. So on our next slide, so if we're sending out an email with student information, we can skip to the next one, that's fine. Here's some information that is safe to send unencrypted and not safe to send unencrypted. SSID, state student ID number, is fine to send unencrypted in an email. And it's actually, if we have an SSID number, we can figure out most of the other student information we need. SSID is great to send to us. You can send your LEA student numbers also unencrypted. Test name is important. Let me know what test your student can't sign into, and we will figure it out from there. School name's great, and class and teacher name. All these things can be sent unencrypted. You don't have to worry. Unsafe information to send in an unencrypted email. Student name. We don't need student names, usually. Not necessary. If I have an SSID, I can figure out what the student's name is. So just as a rule, don't send a student's name in an unencrypted email. We try to avoid gender pronouns, he, she. That's another thing. We can narrow down a student by their gender. So if you must, they, them, great pronouns to send, or just avoid it altogether. Accommodation information, also let's not send that in an unencrypted email. It might have, could be, health information. Do they have a disability? Do they need, all of that is unnecessary to send. If you do need to identify a student by name, if there's a duplicate student, you can always call me on the phone. We can talk about it on the phone or encrypt that email and send me the extra information you might need to send me.
And just to add to what Maureen is saying, anytime you're emailing any of the contact people at assessment at USPE, all we need is the SSID number. And it's probably a really good practice, as you guys know from student data privacy rules, to remind teachers not to email student names to you. Because what we're seeing a lot now are a lot of email threads where they will reach out to you, and then you will forward the email on to us. And so we have long email threads with lots of personal information about students that is getting sent via email, and now it's gone to possibly 3 or 4 different locations. So it's really important to make sure that everyone's aware that the only thing we need is the SSID number. No matter what assessment you're talking about, that's all that we need. And the test. Oftentimes it's useful if you can just tell us SSID number and you're talking about RISE, or you're talking about Utah Aspire Plus, or you're talking about Acadience Math. But all we need is the SSID number. And you'll notice when we respond back that we will go in and actually redact all the places where there is safe harbor information that has been added. We will go in and actually redact student names. When you get responses back from us, we use they and them. If you used he or she, we will go in and redact all of that information. And sometimes if it's too, we will have to encrypt that email back to you. So it's important that everyone understands, that student data privacy is a really big deal. All we need is the SSID number and the information, the test number, and that's all that we need.
Excellent. There's also another way to share student information through Move It. It allows, if you have a larger file, maybe with student information, we can do it this way. If we send you a file, it will show up in the download folder. If you are sending us a file, you would upload it in the folder. It's structured just like any other sort of file system with higher level folders going down. If you would like to set up an account with that, you can contact Emily and she will get you taken care of. I think we can move on. All right, so next we're going to talk about data validations and Utricks. It's the Utah E-Transcript Record Exchange. It's an electronic transcript system where all student information is housed, not just assessment, but all information about students. It's taken directly from your LEA's SIS system, and it's just got everything in there. So here's sort of how the data flows. It starts out in your student information system. And, we have a question in the chat. What student information would we need to send through Move It? I think Move It would mostly be for a large file, and maybe Kim can add to this.
Sure. You can actually use Move It to send any information that you would like to use. We use Move It back and forth. It's a secure site that we can use to send unencrypted data. So if you have a large file that might have maybe you have a spreadsheet that has SSID numbers and a lot of personal information that you need to send perhaps to, I don't know, to Maureen to do some rostering checks. It's a good idea to use Move It in order to do that. And Emily Ng is the person in assessment who sets up all the Move It accounts. And so you want to reach out to her if you don't have a Move It account. We use Move It to provide information. Sometimes we get information from our vendors occasionally that people have reached out. We will send information back to you via Move It. One of the things that is sent back and forth via Move It are our assessment, when we get assessment notifications about students who typed disturbing content in tests and things like that. We will send those to you as well when we get those. And they go through because it's unencrypted, it's encrypted email. It's also a way, if you have a test administrator who has a question about test content, they think something's wrong, the answer could be wrong. You have to call us. You don't send it, you do not ever email, take pictures or photograph any test content and send it through email. You could send that through to us via Move It as well. I hope that helps answer. Any other questions about that?
Hey, Kim, this is Katina. Sorry to interrupt. I started typing and then realized I wasn't going to make sense. Every time I've used the Move It file, every single time I've had to go through the whole update password, get a hold of someone because it didn't work. Is it because I'm doing something wrong, or is it like a 30-day thing? Password expires. How does that work?
I'm going to let Emily answer that question because she's in charge of Move It. So Emily, can you provide any guidance on that?
Sure. If you have an account, it's good for, I think your password is good for a year. If you don't log in for so long, like a year, then your account will automatically be deactivated. It won't be deleted. It'll just become deactivated. If you're having that much trouble logging in every single time, I would work with your IT department, your district IT department or your charter school IT department, and make sure that they're not somehow blocking that site. Because I know I've worked with you in the past, Katina, about that, and that's a rare situation that you have. Not everybody has that same problem. Once you're in, you're in. One thing with Move It accounts, because it's a secure site, we really try to make sure that, too many hands in the cookie jar is trouble. And so we really try to make sure that the assessment director gets access to Move It. And if the assessment director, if the assessment director has approved maybe the data person to also have an account, I will send an email to the assessment director if anybody else asks to have a Move It account to access assessment information. We really try to be protective of that. So I hope that helps. If you need a Move It account, if you're a new assessment director and you need a Move It account, just send me an email and I can get that ticket put in to get the account created. So
the link to Emily's email is also included in the slide deck as well. And somebody who has access to the chat can type her email in there as well.
I can put it in there in just a second. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. That's a lot of information about Move It for me too. Okay. So back to our topic at hand. So here's how information flows with us. Student information is entered in your SIS. It's validated and then it's enters into Utricks, and then we share that information from Utricks with our assessment vendors. I think we can go to the next slide. All right, so what are these validations? So before information enters into Utricks, it has to pass validations. We need to make sure there's no errors in the data. There are different things that can cause information not to pass into Utricks. So if you need to check if there's errors in your submission, then you can go into our data gateway and check on those. If you want it, the pathway is here on the slide. You go to data gateway and then Utricks and Utricks overview. You'll be able to see this. It shows you fatal errors. That's going to keep a student from being entered into Utricks, and level 1 warnings. A student may still pass into Utricks if it has these warnings, but it does mean there's a problem with them. Not everyone may have access to this Utricks overview. I know some LEAs don't give this access to everyone, so you may not be able to see this, but there's someone who is in charge of this that can check on this for you. We can go to the next.
And this is
sorry.
And this is the reason why we recommend if you are not, you need to know who your IT or Utricks specialist is in your school or district, because they are the ones who have access to go ahead and update your Utricks. Exactly. So, and that is a very good place to start if you know a student isn't rostered for a test. So here's another problem that can happen sometimes. You could have stale data, which just means that your school's nightly submission has stopped being accepted by Utricks. If you can see, it tells you the last time the process was complete. It could be maybe your data hasn't been uploaded because school year's been over, or for whatever reason your LEA hasn't submitted data for a while. And it could, so if you have stale data, especially, and I guess only now, what Utah Compose will tell you, you've had a stale extract, and there should be a reset button, so you can reset that extract, and then the new and data should flow again to Utah Compose. It's something that this is something you definitely have to check as you start submitting to Utricks this year, like last year. There is a change in something to do with the data exchange, and so Utah Compose, for some reason, is, you need to double check. It is the number one thing that tends to be stale, or why teachers can't see their current data once you are sending stuff via Utricks. And stale data actually occurs when more than like 10% of your student records change. This happens a lot at semester or trimester course changes. So that's one of the things that you would want to check as well. And that's a really common place. If somebody emails, it's often we get an email that will say, we can't see any of our students. And we'll say, have you checked this? And then somebody checks and goes, oh, that's it. And then it is an overnight process. So you want to make sure that you're aware of this. It's something to change, to double check from time to time. All right, I think, and then, all right, so if you ever wanted to see what your submission looks like, you can, if you have the access, you can examine data certified. You can click on the little link to, and it will download an Excel file for you. It is a large file, especially if you have a larger LEA. That's going to be a big file, but if you ever needed to see what your submission to Utricks looks like, here's where it is. Okay, so now we're going to look at our what happens when we send Utricks data to your assessment vendors. So most assessments we send nightly updates to. You'll notice on this list it has the name of the test and then the name of the vendor. So the Apple test
The vendor is called LTI. Acadian's Math and Reading can be ABM, ALO, Amplify, and so on. These tests we roster nightly, so they're getting a nightly import of all of our student information. We have 2 tests that are one-time uploads, ACT and Wida, so we just send them and they get a once-a-year, one-time upload from us, and that's that.
For the For the
Sorry.
pre-ID files, you'll get lots of notice about that, and the specialist also will provide you with the date that has to happen as well in AD memos.
And I guess once that date passes, then you guys will have to manually make any changes once we've made that one-time upload yearly. Alrighty, so not every student is eligible for every assessment. So we have certain student demographics make a student eligible for a test, student courses, certain business rules apply that determine which students are eligible to roster for which assessments. So we can go next. Here's some of the ways that we decide. The grade of students in, core code for the courses they're taking, their 1% status, and their EL status. I think we can go next. So for instance, if we have 2 students, they're both 9th graders. John is in 9th grade, so he's going to be eligible to take the Utah Aspire Plus assessment. Grace also is in 9th grade, but she has that 1% flag on her record. So she's going to be eligible to take DLM assessment, but not Utah Aspire Plus, because that 1% flag makes her ineligible for the Utah Aspire Plus, but eligible for the DLM assessment. All right, so how do we decide on which courses make you eligible for an assessment? So here's the for instance. We look at the highest course code in the list. If a student is enrolled in integrated science grade 7 and some other science courses, we're going to take the highest course on that list, and that's going to determine which assessment they qualify for. So once again, if we have a student enrolled in 6th grade, in science grade 6 and just grade 6, then it's going to determine he's eligible for the Rise Science grade 6, because that eligible course code was science grade 6. It was at the top of the list. And any of these course codes can be found on our website. Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Sorry. All right. So what does 1% status mean? And I think maybe I'll let an expert explain that. I'm sure someone can explain that better than I.
Tracy's going to be explaining the 1%. That's a student who has severe cognitive disabilities, and she'll be explaining that in detail in a few minutes.
Fantastic. And let's see, we've tried, oh, sorry, you go ahead. They've tried to get on Amplify, and the student information was not available. When they called them and they said that we had to update Clever, I thought that they received information through Utricks. So as far as I know, Clever is just a single sign-on so that students can sign into all their curriculum applications. I'm not sure what Clever would have to do with rostering students, but someone might know that answer better than I do.
Yeah, I'll jump in. That's for Acadians. So Amplify is rostered through Utricks, not Clever. ALO is rostered either through Clever or a uploaded file. So if I'm not sure why there's that conflict. So Amplify data is pulled through Utricks. So that student information. If it's not pulling through to Amplify, then there's errors within your Utricks that need to be fixed, like Maureen just talked about, like those fatal errors. The information isn't going through.
And it looks like, okay. All right. All right, so I think we can move on to the next one. All right, so here is just a quick checklist, what to do if you are having trouble rostering students. First, you need to check if your student is actively enrolled in a course that triggers the assessment. They're not going to get their RISE science test if they aren't enrolled in a science section. You want to check that the course and the school entry and exit dates. If your student's enrolled in courses at a date that's before their entry date into school, for instance, that's going to cause an issue. You want to check the priority of the course compared to the other students, like we just showed on that list. If they have another course that's a higher priority, it could cause them to be rostered for an incorrect assessment. You want to check the status of your Utricks submission in the data gateway. Just make sure that's going through. For instance, like we showed with our two students, if you think a student should be in RISE Aspire Plus, but they have that 1% flag, they're going to be put into a different assessment. And if all else fails, you can email me and I will help you figure out any sort of problems you're having getting those kids rostered for the correct assessments.
And one real quick caution that we want to add to you is if you have students who, particularly with RISE, who aren't enrolled in a course that generates a test, and you discover at the morning that you want to administer a RISE test, it is an overnight process. You have to wait for the nightly upload. So remember that this is an important thing to double check prior to getting ready to test, to make sure that you have double check your rosters, make sure that everyone who's supposed to be testing is eligible to test. And it's a really common thing that happens, particularly at summative testing time. If you people forget and then they go, oh wait, we can't find the student, and then it can mess up your testing schedules. So save everybody stress and make sure that you you're very aware of rosters.
I found myself saying that it's an overnight process during testing time. I've said that a million times a day. It's an overnight process. And then here's my contact information, maureen.rushing@schools.utah.gov. Please feel free to reach out. Whenever you have an issue, I'm happy to help.
Are there any more questions in the chat?
There is one question about a brand new school that still needs a Utricks account created. I can kind of answer that. There should be, on our information technology page, there should be contact information for the Utricks help desk, and they can help you get an account created since you're a new school.
Thank you. I've actually emailed them about 4 times since starting in early July.
Oh no.
And they sent me the paperwork, right, to complete. I completed that for myself and for our executive director. And so they were very quick to answer my first request. And then I've sent it to them 3 times since, I believe, July 6th, and I haven't heard any response. So there's about 6 different people on that email. So is there anyone else specific aside from the help desk that you would recommend that I could send that to?
You can
starting next week.
You can forward that on to us, and we can try to help push that through and get that done a little bit quicker. We might just have to pull in some other some additional support for the Utricks team to help make sure that gets processed fast for you.
Okay, so should I send that to you, Emily, or you, Anne Marie?
You can send it to Maureen. She's the data person, so you can send it to Maureen. I would also include Kim Rathke on that email. You're welcome to include me as well, but I know it's going to be the Utricks help desk that has to set that up. So
okay, got it.
Yeah.
And so we're also in the process of setting up our SIS. So I've been working on that and hope to have it up and running very soon. But I'm just wondering, I know we're supposed to test for Acadians and Amplify pretty quick here into the school year. And so can we do a manual upload if our SIS is not 100% ready to go and going through Utricks for those systems?
I'm going to let Teresa or Sydney or Jared answer that question. Manual upload if they can't get their students loaded for Acadians.
Are you using Amplify?
We are, yes.
Okay. There is no manual upload for Amplify. It does have to go through Utricks.
Okay.
For Acadians Math, it's a paper pencil administration, so you can get the administration taken care of prior to having your accounts and ADM set up. And so you can administrate because you have until the end of October to then get that data entered into ADM. So you have a little bit of flex time for Acadians Math. So the administration, you can print off all your materials and administer it. And then once Utricks is talking to ADM and you have all that set up, go back and enter the data because you do have until the end of October for that for Acadians Math.
Yeah, I would start with your math because you can administer that paper pencil and then do your reading after once you have your students within the Amplify system.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Any other
We
questions?
also have one.
Looks like there's one more question. How many points of contact in the school are allowed to have access? And who should have access to Utricks?
That's a question that you probably have to ask the help desk, but Utricks, when you're talking about whoever has access to checking for errors and resetting, I would limit that to not a lot of people because you're actually controlling all the data that's flowing from your school to USBE. Larger districts probably have a few more Utricks specialists than others. If we have any ADs, more experienced ADs on the call, I can only see about 4 people because I'm running the show. But we can find out from you, but that's also a question for Utricks help desk. I wouldn't say that you give it to very many people. In many places, it's one person.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm going to hand off to the next person.
Okay, we've already asked a lot of questions, so we're going to go ahead and move on unless anybody has been saving one that they wanted to type in. And we're going to talk now about school accountability. And Anne Michelle Neal is on vacation, and Darren, she said she thought you were going to do the slides, and I'm not sure, and so I'm going to let you go ahead and take the lead.
All right. Well, I'm happy to talk about school accountability. Go ahead and advance the slides and we'll see what we can do. So school accountability is one of those high profile things. It's related to state assessment. What you're looking at here is a breakdown of how the school accountability system currently is constituted, or where the percentage of points, if you will, for each school accountability system, whether you're in an elementary or middle school or in a high school, comes from. In 2017, the state legislature passed a bill that changed, that provided our last update to our school accountability system. And there were a couple of significant changes that occurred in that piece of legislation. It's important to note that the school accountability criteria is established by the Utah State Legislature. So it's in code and then it's implemented under the direction of the Utah State Board of Education. But in 2017, one of the changes they made was they shifted the percentage of points in school accountability to be more growth oriented than what had previously been proficiency oriented. The second significant change they made was in the secondary setting, where they included additional metrics outside of what had traditionally been just our state assessment and graduation rates. So you see post-secondary readiness comes into play there with advanced coursework. Advanced coursework includes concurrent enrollment, CTE pathway concentrators, and advanced placement as well. So more information can be found out, or detailed information about the school accountability system can be found and accessed and shared through Utah's technical or accountability technical guide, which there's a link on our website and also on the link within the school report card. Another thing to note is that as we move into the 2022-2023 school year, looking backwards, in 2020 there was waivers placed on state assessment and also accountability determinations based on that across the country, including in Utah, federal and state waivers. In 2021, those waivers for reporting school accountability metrics were extended because of the disruption to our ability to calculate student growth. And so for the 2022 school year, in the coming months, we will be publishing the Utah School Accountability System, which will also reinstitute the requirement in state statute that we publish an overall rating. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This slide's simply indicating what the indicators are specified by Every Student Succeeds Act, is what that S acronym stands for, and also in state law, specific indicators to our school accountability system. And I've mentioned the post-secondary readiness on the previous slide, and also the inclusion of a more growth-focused school accountability system. Let's go to the next slide. So again, we've over the last couple of years, we've had waivers and also addendums that have been completed. The U.S. Department of Education provided a waiver for certain accountability requirements in 2021, and those are listed here on this slide. No statewide assessments were administered in the spring of 20. Many school accountability requirements are waived due to the cancellation of those assessments as well. And then there's a link in these slides where you can get more information about that. Let's go to the next slide, please. So school letter grades, and I alluded to this earlier. These will be coming back based on the 2022 assessment cycle, 21-22 assessment cycle. We expect the school report cards will be released in October of this year. And we'll talk more about access to the data from at the statewide level, the processes we go through to get it prepared for release, either later in this meeting or in our meeting next week with all assessment directors. But this is something that we actually haven't had in place because of waivers at the federal and state level in 20 and 21. In 2019, we had some disruptions to our state assessment system where we went back and received a waiver from the state legislature. It is interesting or worth noting that the requirement to have an overall school or letter rating for a school, a grade or rating system, is a state requirement in Utah. There's no federal requirement that is in place forcing states to publish an overall rating for their schools. So it's really been since 2018 since any of our community has seen an overall school rating. And again, those will come back in the fall of 2022. Let's go to the next slide, please. School report cards. As the state legislature updated our school accountability system, as I mentioned earlier in 2017, we also at the state board took action to create a school dashboard or the school report card. I hope that each of you will take an opportunity to look at those if you haven't already. They're released annually to communicate school performance. They're designed for parents as the primary audience. You'll find other tools that the State Board of Education produces that have a more educator-focused or centric focus to them. On the data gateway, many of the displays that we have there are designed for our education community. The Compare Schools tool, for instance. When I was in a district position, we would use that with our school principals regularly. The achievement tool in the data gateway, which would allow teachers to drill down and see specific student growth percentiles and their achievement levels for students that they had the previous year and also students that they have the current year. Those tools have more of an educator focus, but the school report card is designed for our broader community. And you'll see here that we have on our timeline September 18th. What we typically do when we release the school report card is we'll open it for LEA review a week or two prior to making it available to the public. There's two purposes, at least, for this. One is to give the schools and districts an opportunity to go in and see the data that's there and take a look at it. And if they see something that seems inconsistent with what they had expected to see, if it's possible error, it gives some time for us to notify that. So it's a final quality assurance check. The other, and maybe the primary reason for releasing the school report cards to our districts and schools before we release it to the public, is it gives you a chance to get in, take a look at the way the data is displayed, and give you a chance to prepare your messaging. Now remember that you'll have access to your data as well as statewide data through the data gateway and the tools that are available in there prior to September 18th. But specific to the school report card, you'll have a window or opportunity to review those and give us feedback there. Let me pull up the chat. I think I saw a question come in. Is there a user manual for the data gateway to help us use the data more effectively? That's a great question. I know there's a help functionality on the data gateway. I don't know if there's a user manual. We'll have Aaron Bruff will be with us next week at the assessment directors meeting, the regular August assessment directors meeting. They'll be discussing, we're bringing him in to talk to the assessment directors because of the work that they're doing to transition some of the reports or many of the reports in the data gateway to a Tableau data visualization tool. And that would be a great place for us to get an answer to that question, unless there is somebody on this call that already has an answer to that question, perhaps on my team. I'll pause for a minute for that.
This is Emily. I'm happy to put Aaron's email in the chat. Yeah, his team is they're the ones over the data gateway, so they would have answers to that question.
Great. And then when I get done with my portion on the school report card, I'll go to our website on the data gateway and see if I can find the help desk or the help functionality that's built in, and I'll put that link in the chat as well this time. Thank you, Emily. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is the Utah Accountability Technical Manual. That's the appropriate name that I mentioned earlier, where you can get a lot more detail around our school accountability system. There's a link in the slides. You can also go to our the state school board's website and go to the search function and just type in Accountability Technical Manual, and you'll be able to find that. We've described here some of the main purposes of this Accountability Technical Manual. I actually reference it still in my position today. I'll reference it and provide links to it in responses to emails that I get or questions that I get. Most recently, just last week, there were some questions that came in around a proposed feasibility study that was conducted by the city of Orem, I believe. And in that feasibility study, they'd contracted with an outside entity to conduct that. And in that feasibility study, there were some statements made where they compared data for some of, or I guess all of the schools within Orem city limits. They had requested data from Alpine School District, and they'd requested, then they went onto our website on the data gateway and did a comparison, and they made some statements inside that feasibility study that seemed inaccurate. There was a media outlet that reached out to me, and answering and figuring out the discrepancies, the source of the discrepancy, the answer to that was actually found in the Utah Accountability Technical Manual. So as recently as last week, I've used this book or this manual and referenced it and shared it with people who have questions so they can have a better understanding of what the data that they're looking at on the data gateway or within the school report card, what it actually means, what are the sources of those data and what rules are applied to the data set before we publish the data. Thank you, Tara Lynn. I'm glad to see that others also use this accountability manual regularly. So again, Anne Michelle is our specialist, and she has a lot of expertise around school accountability. Our contact information is here. And again, we'd encourage you to come to know Anne Michelle as you get into your role as an assessment leader in your district and be comfortable reaching out to her. Thank you.
People have been asking questions about the school report card and chat. Does anyone have any additional questions before we move on? Thanks, Darren. Okay, we are going to pause for about 10 minutes to let everybody have a chance to do a bio break or whatever you need. We will be back at 10:25. If anybody has any questions that you've thought of, feel free, you're welcome to go ahead and unmute and ask if you're not going to go step away for a break. We'll be still here monitoring, but we will be reconvene at 10:25. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started again. Thank you. Hopefully everybody's still logged in and ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and click and we'll move on to Nate. So Angela, you're up.
Hi, I will not go into too many details because it impacts so very few of you. This year is a really small sample, so about 2% of our schools are selected, probably not any of yours. If you receive an email from me, that means your school is participating. And if you have questions, just email me or call me or text me or whatever you need to do, and I can help you get through the entire process. But I'll go over a quick overview because we've got so many slides to get through. NAEP is a federally required assessment, and so schools cannot refuse, but students can refuse. Students or parents can refuse. We've been testing since 1969. It's the only continuous assessment that actually compares state to state. It is a sample of our students each year. Utah in particular receives about $80 million on up per year by participating in NAEP. And let's see, it is a no stakes test. So we really work very diligently to get all of the students who are sampled to participate. Your students that are in special education, they get the same exact accommodations that they would on state testing. So we want to make sure we include everyone we can include. It's all anonymous. No kids' names are taken. There's no names on the test. Nothing is recorded. So all of that data is just blind and it kind of goes into a pot of information. We don't look at any school level testing or district level testing. It only gets pulled at the state level. So there's no way to track it back, which is a really great thing. You know, sometimes schools don't like it because they don't get any results for their school. But the good thing is that there's no stakes in it. You don't have to worry about, oh, this school does really well, this school did really bad, and the ramifications of that. None of that happens, which is kind of nice. All right. This year, we're doing a long-term trend of age 13 students. That testing will happen between October and December. I am working right now on sending out the fall mailings. If you've been selected to participate, you already know that. And in the next week, you'll receive another notification of what your next steps are to get your school registered and upload student lists. But this year, again, it's just for age 13, long-term trend. I also oversee some international assessments. So we have a handful of schools that have been selected for that as well this year. And again, I will let you know if you've been selected. Your school already does know, but you'll get an email from me in the next couple weeks to confirm everything that's going on right now. Okay, the big thing is if you have questions, if you don't know what to do, just contact me. Don't waste time trying to dig up answers yourself. You will not bother me. You can email me several times. You can call me, whatever you need to do. Just pick up the phone, tell me what you're having troubles with, and we will get it resolved very quickly. So that's about it, because again, I don't want to bore the entire group because most of you will not be selected for NAEP. So thank you.
Hey, Tracy and Jessica.
Okay, so some accommodations information. Go ahead. Remember that when we look at accommodations, every statewide assessment will have different allowable accommodations for students who are on an IEP 504 or who are English learners and have an accommodations plan. Teachers, it is their responsibility to be aware of the different allowable accommodations. So it is also in your best interest, as you will help guide some of this conversation in your LEA, to make sure you kind of understand what are allowable accommodations as well. Any student who is using what is considered an accommodation has to have the accommodation participation code set in the different student platforms. And knowing that the key to accommodations is they do not invalidate the construct of the assessment or the score validity. So accommodations really, the purpose of them, they change how the student learns, or in this case with assessment, it will change how the student accesses our different assessments. So the key things here that you need to know, and Kim, I don't know if you hit it one more time, if it'll do the animation or not. The original slides had an animation. But the key thing here are those last two bullets, right? So knowing that accommodations are allowable because, right, they don't alter the validity or score interpretation or reliability, right? They don't go against the construct of what's being assessed. And it's also important to understand and be able to kind of help guide your teachers in knowing that just because we have an accommodation outlined for instruction and it may be appropriate for that, it may not always be appropriate for standardized assessments. Okay, next slide. So where do you find information on the allowable accommodations? So the first link here will link you directly to Jessica and I's special education assessment webpage, where you can find information on accessibility, assistive technology, and then there's an accommodations tab where you can find our Utah participation and accommodation policy. We are in the final stages of running accessibility and adding just a few other things to this year's policy. So we hope to have that posted by the next week or two with the new updated policy. But that really is going to be the guide for you and teachers, and it will outline all of the necessary accommodation information you need for all of our assessments. You can also find in each individual test administration manual, you can find different charts and information around accommodations for each specific assessment in those TAMs as well. So there's a couple different places that you and teams can look for that accommodation information. Okay, modifications. Let's talk about what happens with modifications. So modifications are changes to what a student learns. Or in the case of assessment, right, if we have a modified assessment, right, we no longer can say that that student score is valid and comparable to other scores. So it's changing the construct of what's being tested. So if you have a student that moves forward and uses an accommodation that is not allowed, you've now modified that assessment. IEP teams do have a little bit of that autonomy to make that decision point, or sometimes you will have teachers that will not fully understand what they're supposed to be doing with accommodations, and they'll allow a student to use an accommodation that's not allowed. That now becomes modified. So when we do have a modification, we do have to set that modified participation code in student settings. So that's why it's really important to really understand what's allowable and not allowable. Okay, so there are accommodation request forms that need to be submitted to the state for certain things in order for students to be able to use them on our statewide assessments. So you can see the list there. So if we have any student using a scribe or any sort of assistive technology or Braille, or participating in the remote proctoring of the benchmarks, and any exceptional accommodations. Those are all forms that have to be filled out and submitted to Jessica or myself so that we can go through and approve those forms, but really what it is to ensure that the correct information on how to administer the assessment with these particular accommodations, that information is down to the teacher level so they know what they're doing come testing time. So the top link there will send you to the accommodations page where you can find all the various request forms. For Utah Aspire Plus, those request forms will get sent to Jessica. We do ask 3 to 4 weeks of processing time to submit that. It's just Jessica and I going through each of these request forms. So they can sometimes stack up if you wait too long to send those in. For RISE, we will have a new process this year. So my new people won't know that it's new, but any of my returning people will. So this year, what we are going to do is have you submit any of these accommodations request forms through Tide. So we are still working on going through what exactly that looks like in the system. So hopefully by next week, we'll have a little bit more information for you on where to do that in the system. You can find additional information for RISE. They have a separate assistive technology manual, which we've linked you here. And for Utah Aspire Plus, in their test administration manual, they have one manual that combines anything and everything you need for Utah Aspire Plus. Okay, so as of right now, what is it that you guys really need to be doing by the end of August, towards the end of September? Really what you need to do is you need to find out who in your LEA are the people, your special ed director, the people that really communicate with your teachers, with students on IEPs. You need to find out who's in charge of 504 accommodations and also English language learners. So really what I want you to do is go seek these people out. If you don't already know them, get to meet them, say hello, and then also discuss what your your communication plan is going to be regarding accommodations. So one of the things Jessica and I can get to you guys quicker than we can special education directors. We do weekly memos that go out to you. We have monthly meetings where special education, the special education directors, they get a monthly memo and we meet quarterly. So I really do rely on you guys to get this information down the pike to them. So please go find those people and talk about how you guys want to exchange that information this year on accommodations, and then also become knowledgeable about what's allowed and not allowed. And so I don't know if Jessica had anything else to add. I think she's got some specific stuff coming up.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was just going to add that we need to make certain when we're making these accommodations and as testing season comes around the corner, and we'll make these reminders later in the year, that our students are not making independent accommodation decisions for themselves. And so just realizing that all accommodations decisions legally are made through an IEP meeting or with a 504 meeting, and then our EL teams at our different LEAs. So just understanding that we're making certain that we are following those plans that those teams have created for our students.
Perfect. Okay, so next I'm going to touch on alternate assessments. So earlier, Maureen had talked about the 1% flag for DLM, and there were some questions around that. So let's talk about this really a little bit more in depth. So alternate assessments are specifically for students with cognitive disabilities. And so what does this mean? This means that IEP teams have determined that a student has a significant impact in their intellectual functioning and adaptive behavior, that they have a severe and complex disability which can limit meaningful participation in the standard core curriculum and therefore regular standard assessments. So these students are not able, due to their significant cognitive disability, able to access our regular assessments with appropriate accommodations. So with that, they also require that really extensive modified or altered instruction. And these students are learning their grade level curriculum through the support of our alternate achievement standards, the essential elements. And the key here is it's determined by the IEP team. So a student's IEP has to outline that they're participating in an alternate assessment. A building principal or a teacher alone does not get to determine that Johnny will participate in alternate assessments. And so that's where that 1% flag comes in. So here's a list. So IDEA, which is our federal regulations around students with disabilities, requires that whenever we, as a state or you as an LEA or a school, have a required assessment that all students participate in, we have to have an alternate assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities to participate in. So you can see here's our list. So we have an alternate assessment for Peep and Keep and Acadians, reading and math. Our alternate assessment for RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, and ACT is DLM. So we consider that our year-end summative assessment. And then for Wida, there is also a Wida alternate access for these kiddos. We do not have an alternate for NAEP because NAEP is specific to assessing only gen ed standards. So students who have that 1% flag set and the team has outlined their alternate assessment test takers, if one of those students gets chosen for NAEP, they will just be replaced with another student in the school. And then we also do not have an alternate for Apple because Apple is very specific in assessing the dual language. So you can see here are all of the alternate assessments. So what does this mean? This means that if you have any of these assessments, Peep, Keep, Acadians, RISE, UA Plus, or ACT happening in your school districts, you need to be aware and on the lookout and help disseminate information that students with significant cognitive disabilities should be participating in the alternate if they can't access the regular one. Okay, next page. The next one, Kim. Oh, can you go? There we go. Okay, so we do have some resources for you if you want to learn more about who these students are, but resources that should go out down to your teachers and building principals. We do have participation guidelines that outline exactly what the expectation is for these students. We have the definition of significant cognitive disabilities also in there. And we have a guidance document that just really helps teams determine who are these kiddos. Sometimes that can be difficult for teams to make that decision point. And then again, we linked you to the assessment webpage, and then there's a link there specifically to our significant cognitive disabilities webpage. Is the DLM testing window the same as the general assessment that it is aligned to? Excellent. So Vanessa, we are going to answer those questions right now for you. So Acadians reading and Acadians math alternate assessment are the same windows as the regular Acadians reading and Acadians math. So your BOY, MOY, and EOY run the exact same time. Your data reporting is the exact same. I think go to the next page, Kim. You can find those alternate assessments. They're rubric based on the special education assessment webpage. So you can just download those. There's a guide, and there's will also be a link to a Canvas training course. So the key to any students participating in alternate assessment is having that 1% flag, and I set in your SIS systems. So it's usually something that comes through the SCRAM record. The SCRAM record is all of the information that indicates our student has special education services. And within that SCRAM record, we set that 1% flag. And that's how we know this is a student who shouldn't be participating in our regular assessments, if that makes sense. Okay, so for PEEP, it's the same. The window's the exact same for entry and exit. The the 4 weeks before until the 4 weeks after preschool, with the data entry dates being the same. So for PEEP, you find the rubrics for PEEP. Instead of on the special education webpage, you'll find this on the assessment webpage under the kindergarten tab. So when you go in and you click on this link, you'll see the kindergarten entry and exit, the student materials and manuals, and then below that, you'll see the alternate there. So that's where you find the PEEP alternate. Now, this is where it gets tricky with PEEP. The key to PEEP is students are only expected to participate in the alternate assessment if they are participating in the programming that is receiving the PEEP funding. So if you are not sure if your student should be participating in the PEEP, this is where you definitely need to sit down and talk with your preschool people and figure out exactly our students who would have a significant cognitive disability that would need this. Are they receiving the programming that the funding is being given to? So if you have more questions around that, please feel free to reach out to me individually and I can hook you up with all of our preschool people to help navigate that. Okay, KEEP. So our students should all be participating in KEEP. Again, window's the same as the regular, data entry is exactly the same. But what we do with KEEP, if you go to the next page, you can find those rubrics and guidance information again on the kindergarten assessment tab. So same thing like PEEP, you'll see the regular KEEP, TAMs, and student materials, and then you'll find the KEEP alternate. Acadience Math and Acadience Reading, those alternate scores are entered directly into your SIS systems. And the guidance documents that you can find online will help with that. You can also email me if you have questions. Whereas KEEP and PEEP, those alternate scores are entered, and help me out with this, Sid, are entered into Data Gateway in the same place that you enter your PEEP and KEEP regular scores. But once you get in to enter that, you'll see a tab that says alternate. So that's where you'll enter those. Okay. All right. So DLM, Dynamic Learning Maps. So this is our alternate assessment for RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, and ACT. So our students in grades 3 through 11 are the only ones that are assessed on the DLM. This is where we have a little bit of a different window. So you can see highlighted in red here, it is. So 3/13/23. So it opens March 13th and closes June 9th. So go ahead and calendar that. So our window opens on March 13th and teachers have until June 9th to finish testing. Now, one of the differences here is you have to submit your testing plan where you outline, what was it, 6 weeks, 8 weeks? I'm not quite sure, Kim, that you're testing RISE and UA Plus.
8 weeks.
8 weeks. Here's what I recommend with DLM. I recommend that you do not hold your teachers to that same 8 weeks. Depending on how many students you have, it can take multiple weeks to get through DLM testlets. So I really would advise you to give your teachers that entire window to test. And definitely they need to make sure they get to testing before May. So I have that happen every year. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about DLM. What do I do? There is some pretty extensive, anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, 4 hours worth of training that is required for teachers. So please make sure your teachers are giving themselves enough time to get ready to administer the DLM. Okay, so what do you need to do right now for DLM? So right now we need to get you access to Educator Portal. So if you're a new assessment director, you need to reach out and email me. I need your full name, email address, and a Cactus ID so that we can get you set up an Educator Portal so you can help support that. Typically what I do is I assign assessment directors and special ed directors a district testing coordinator role. And then from there, you can assign other people in your district if need be. So that's the first thing. We need to get you guys set up. Again, go meet your special education director. Sometimes it depends. So you'll want to work through really who's going to take the lead on being the support person for these teachers for DLM. We've got some districts out there that it's the assessment department that takes lead, and there's other districts that really it is the special ed department. So you'll want to definitely get with those people to figure out who's going to be the lead out on this. Becoming familiar with the DLM webpage and Educator Portal, and then also starting to take note of the students that need that 1% flag set. So we are rolling into doing some automated uploads of students. So we should in the next week or two actually start pushing students to the system. Hopefully that will happen this week. So as your LEAs are uploading in your SIS systems and pushing students through Utricks, we will start looking for those 1% kiddos and start filtering them into the DLM system. Okay, and then just so you are aware, and then next Thursday I'll have more. I will be doing a district DLM training. So keep a lookout for that. That will be in next AD meeting next week, that information. So I will be doing a DLM training to help all of you new assessment directors and whoever else wants to attend that from the district level. Okay, any other questions? Okay, feel free to email me if something comes up.
Is there anything else in the chat, Emily, Tracy?
I don't think so. Carolina just made the comment that there's 27 testlets. So yep, so students, there's quite a few testlets that they have to take between ELA, math, and science. Oh, one more thing to note. So with DLM, so students in grades 3 through 11 do ELA and math, but we don't start testing science until grade 4. So we follow that same as RISE. So third graders do not participate in science. Okay.
Thanks, Tracy. Megan?
All right, Wida. And Kim said that you're going to be learning a lot of new acronyms today. Wida no longer stands for anything. It's just Wida. So it's a name and not an acronym anymore. Wida is our English language proficiency assessments for the state. So a couple of tips for ADs. The first thing that you'll definitely want to do is become friends, introduce yourself to your Title III or ALS director. So ALS, that is an acronym, Alternative Language Services. So who oversees your English language programs and services? And really, just like Tracy said with DLM, who's going to oversee the Wida assessments? Is it going to be a collaborative partnership? Will assessment oversee it? Will your language services department oversee it? So just make sure that you do have that set. And so, you know, Anne Michelle, again, not here. She is also over Wida with me. We do present to the ALS directors regularly and communicate with them as well to make sure that this information is getting to both people, just in case there is, you know, one group or another that is charged with administering these assessments. Another person that you'll definitely want to become buddies with is your technology coordinator. So this is going to be the person who's going to be installing the secure browsers on student devices and making sure that you have your test administration on platforms and everything installed on test administrator devices. So, and also really be considering what devices you want to have this all on. And then also just making sure that you're communicating with administrators, test administrators, or building administrators to really make sure that you can ensure when and where students will be testing, to ensure that also that the students really do have equitable opportunities to engage in this testing. So You do not need to submit a testing plan for WIDA access. We encourage you to use the entire window that is available to you because we really do need to make sure that students have every equitable opportunity to engage in this testing, since WIDA access is directly tied to student civil rights. Also, please note there are a couple websites here that you'll want to bookmark for reference. All right, next slide. So we have a couple of assessments for WIDA. We have the Wida Screener. For those of you that are veteran or may have dabbled in WIDA before, we used to do something called the WAPT. Those have all been officially retired, and now we are completely screener. For students that have been previously identified, you might see old WAPT scores that were on a scale of 1 to 30. If you have any questions about those scores or anything, please just reach out to myself or Michelle. To qualify on the old system, students needed to score a 1 to 28 to receive language services. Now everything is on that 1 through 6 scale with the screeners, including the kindergarten screener. And so to qualify for language services in the state of Utah, it is a 5.0. There has been a lot of talk, and I've been getting a lot of questions. As you know, we have been discussing reestablishing an exit criteria for our English learners. Nothing has changed right now. That is all still in progress. If and when things change, we will make sure we blast it out to all LEAs. So if you don't hear it from USBE, it probably hasn't happened. So again, if anything changes for qualifications or exiting, we will let you know. So the Wida Screener, though, this needs to take place normally at the beginning of the year. So as an AD, you'll want to make sure that this is happening pretty soon within the next couple of weeks. When a student enrolls in your school for the first time in Utah, if on their home language survey, there are 3 language questions, if any of those 3 language questions are responded with anything other than English, then that would trigger the need for the student to be screened. It doesn't qualify them for language services, but it does mean they need to be screened using the screener. For students grades 1 through 12, they will do the online screener, and then for our kindergarten students, they will do a paper one-on-one administration. All materials are available in the Wida Secure Portal, and it's available all year round. If you have a need for any paper screeners for students that are newly arrived to the country or are not familiar with technology and having them take a computer test is not appropriate, please contact me. We do have those materials and we cover the cost for those for you, and we can get them to you and either order them and have them sent to you, or we do have them at the state office. So the rule for screeners is students at the beginning of the year need to be screened within 30 calendar days from that first day of enrollment. So again, that number at the beginning of the school year is 30 calendar days. If students enroll after the beginning of the year, then you have 10 school days to get the students screened. Once a student is screened and it qualified for services, you will need to ensure that your SIS systems are updated and they are marked appropriately as an EL in your SIS. Students that are considered EL will then take the WIDA access test annually until they are considered proficient. This year's testing window is January 5th to March 3rd. So again, January 5th to March 3rd. Again, all students, we are an online state. All students grades 1 through 12 will take the online. Again, if you need paper where appropriate, you can order those. And then the kindergarten access is paper one-on-one test administration. For students that have significant cognitive disabilities, there is an alternate access available. Again, this is a paper one-on-one test administration. The testing window is the exact same as the access online and kindergarten access. Now, to qualify for alternate access, students need to first qualify for DLM, but that's not the only thing. Your IEP team and language services team will also need to deem it necessary and that this is the appropriate assessment. So yes, in order to qualify for alternate access, they have to qualify for DLM, but you may as a team decide that, you know what, maybe just regular paper access is more appropriate for this student. Tracy, do you want to pipe in? I saw that you came on camera.
Yeah, so this will work the same way as all of our other alternate assessments. It's determined by the IEP team and it will be outlined in the student's IEP on the assessment addendum as to what assessment they're participating in. So what you just don't want to do is to assume, right, Johnny participates in DLM, he's going to participate in all of the other alternate assessments. It doesn't work that way. So teams have to make that determination assessment by assessment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tracy. And then I see a question in the chat to clarify, new students at the beginning of the year have 30 days. What if a student enrolls on day 5? Do they still have the same school window or only the 10-day window? That's a great question, Catherine, and a question we get quite often. And the answer is a little bit muddy. I wish I could give you a super clear one, but our federal guidance is actually a little muddy on this as well. So my interpretation, I like to say, if it's within that 30 days at the beginning of the school year, I say still allow yourself 30 days. So if they come on day 3, you know, start that 30 calendar day clock from there. After 30 days though, you know, so I would even say, because we realize the beginning of the school year is nuts. You have lots of students transferring in and out, you know, even on day 29, let's say, you can still give yourself that 30-day window. But if a student enrolls, let's say day 31, then you will only have the 10 school days. So I apologize. It's a little bit muddy, but there we go. Let me know if you need further clarification. You are welcome. All right, so you're going to need 2 accounts for our Wida assessments. The first account you're going to need is a Wida Secure Portal account. If you do not have one yet, please contact me so I can set that up for you. And what are going to be your responsibilities with this account? Well, you're going to be charged with creating new accounts for anyone that needs them in your LEA. So test administrators, technology coordinators, and educators. I would really, really encourage you to do a mass upload and actually create accounts for all the educators in your LEA, because the Wida Secure Portal does have self-paced e-learning available to every educator in the state of Utah for free, where they can engage in self-paced professional development for our multilingual learners in Utah. Also, what will you need to do in here? This is where all the test administration trainings are located. And so you will need to monitor who's completed the trainings and for what assessments. All test administrators do need to do trainings annually for the tests they will be administering. So if you have someone administering Access Online, they would just need to do that test administration, not the Access paper test administration training. And then also this is where you will download all of your screener materials that you will need. Next slide, please. Okay, the second account that you're going to need is going to be called Wida AMS. AMS stands for Assessment Management System. Sometimes you'll hear us refer to it as your DRC account. DRC is the vendor for Wida. So DRC actually runs all the technology for the Wida screeners and access tests. And so you'll need this DRC Wida AMS portal account. And this is your test, kind of your test administration platform. So what are you going to need to be doing in Wida AMS? This is where you're going to order any alternate, Braille, or any additional materials. Now, please take note that it says alternate, Braille, and or additional materials. The state will order all of your access materials initially based on a pre-ID upload. As we get closer to the testing windows and as these things come along, we will make sure that we're communicating every step of the process with you. But since your teams do have to determine who will take alternate or Braille, and then we also know rosters change and everything, you would need to order those materials in AMS. And again, we will make sure that we walk you through this process, and we'll actually give you step-by-step instructions. This is also where you or your technology coordinators are going to download the secure browser, the testing platform, which is called Insight. This is also where you get all of your technology updates. You can do monitoring of all testing during your testing window. It's where you're going to manage all of your testing materials as well. There are testing material accountability forms that you have to complete. You will manage student accounts here, and then you will also create and manage AMS user accounts. So test administrators will need accounts, and you'll have to set those up for the coordinators and test administrators at your various schools within your LEA. So again, if you need one of these accounts, please contact me so I can set you up at the district level so you can begin making accounts for everyone in your LEA. And then what are some just other general responsibilities and dates that you should be aware of for our Wida assessments? Please become familiar with the Wida checklist that can be located on our Wida website. Again, those 3 websites were on that first slide. And this is our Utah page on the actual Wida website. The checklist will walk you through everything that you need to be doing for our access testing. ID and placement guidance, that's going to be for screening and what are the processes and kind of our rules and guidance when it comes to identifying and placing students as an EL in Utah, and then also becoming familiar with the test administration manuals. Another thing that you'll need to know that we and Maureen will be communicating with you is Wida Access is rostered by doing a one-time pre-ID upload, and this happens generally in early October. We will let you know that exact date, but what does that mean for you as an AD? That means that you're going to need to make sure that your schools are identifying their students through screening and marking them appropriately in the SIS, because we will pull all information for all identified ELs from your SIS, and then we will upload that for you into Wida AMS and order your initial materials based on that. Again, we talked about that you will have to order materials. You will also need to do a data validation. You will have a 2-week period after our testing window, and that's where you will go in and just check to make sure that students' demographic information is correct, do not score codes are entered correctly if need be, and again, we will give you step-by-step instructions once we come to this. You will also be responsible for distributing distributing the student score reports. They will be available online in Wida AMS on April 28th. So that will mean, per our testing ethics policy, that they would need to be distributed at some point in May. You will also get printed score reports so you don't have to take on that additional cost of printing the reports. Those get shipped about 2 weeks after they're available online. So those printed ones will come in May, but you'll have everything digital at the end of April, which is fantastic. And then also you will need to be responsible for communicating any training opportunities to educators and test administrators. So what are those training opportunities for this year? First, like I mentioned earlier, there are going to be 8 self-paced e-workshops available in the Wida Secure Portal. All of the new ones will be available on the 1st of September, and they're available all year. The rollover is always at the end of August for Wida, so any courses that teachers have been doing, if they want to finish them, they need to finish them before August 31st when everything rolls over. And then the trainings that are going to be specific to Utah, in person or virtual, the first 2 that are coming up are going to be really soon here in less than a month. So September 6th and 7th, we have screener trainings. These are going to be virtual webinars. You can sign up for those in Midas. We will have 1 in-person training this year, and this is more of practices and strategies. That's going to be scaffolding learning through language, and that'll be a 2-day workshop. I believe it will now be, Emily will have to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we're going to have that training up at the Capitol. So that'll be in Midas updated. I think I did update it already, actually. And then come December, we will have access trainings, and those will be virtual webinars. And are these dates correct? Can you go back really quick, please? All of these trainings are in 22, so September of 22 next month, and then these trainings October of 22 and December of 22 before the year rolls over. Melanie, am I correct in you wanting to know if these training dates are correct? Okay. If we do the training, another question, if we do the training on the Wida Secure Portal, do we need to do the ones in Midas? Nope. We just want to make sure that you have opportunities based on your learning styles. You know, do you prefer being, you know, talking to a real person, or do you prefer doing a self-paced on your own e-learning for the training? So we like to make both available. If you prefer the person one, virtual person one, we do record those trainings, and they will be posted to the Wida Secure Portal as well. So you could go back and watch those as well. So that's Wida. Again, if we do the ones in Midas, will it take the place of the ones on the portal? Yes, so you can choose the ones in Midas, the virtual webinars, or you can do the self-paced ones in the portal. Again, you can choose either. We like to make both available, again, depending on which learning style you prefer. So here is our contact information. The screener training is after the 30 days. Rick, your school might have started really, really early. We got those trainings as early as we could. Wida actually runs our trainings for us, and they couldn't begin because of how their year rolls over, because they're the University of Wisconsin, actually. Their year rolls over on the 1st, so they can't start doing trainings till September 1st, so I snagged the earliest dates possible. I apologize. Yeah, you guys you're early. Get onto the Secure Portal and start doing those trainings for the screeners, and contact me if you need an email or an account set up, excuse me. Here's our contact information. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. You all have heard me say this probably a bunch of times. We always get apologies. I know you're so busy. I'm so sorry to bother you. Nope. This is our job, to support you. Contact us and don't feel bad. We're here to help you, and we want this to be as smooth of an experience for you as possible. For those of you that have already started, I hope it's going well. For those of you that haven't started, best of luck at the beginning of the school year.
All right, the Apple assessment is the actual assessment of performance toward proficiency in languages. Next slide. So this is for schools who are part of the dual language immersion program that is sponsored through USBE. Something to kind of be aware of is anybody can take the Apple test. Not all of them are through the DLI program. So just kind of be aware of that because there are a lot of schools who take the Apple test, but it's not under the DLI umbrella. This is only for those schools specifically under the dual language immersion program. So LTI is our vendor who provides the Apple assessment, and it is provided for students who are in grades 3 through 9. Just as a heads up, this is a test that will require headphones and a microphone. And if you are using Apple products, we strongly recommend using Apple headphones and microphones, as generic brands don't always tend to work with the Apple operating system. So just kind of be aware of that. The Apple testing window this year is October 17th through December 2nd. And we would also kind of just remind you, the earlier the better, because if you have any students who receive a UR or an unrateable score, they still need to be able to take it, retake it during that window. There's 4 components to the Apple test that are listed here. Go ahead and go to the next one. And then students for the Apple test are going to be rostered through Utricks using the course codes that Maureen talked about previously. I've included some links here that are super helpful. You can look at them on your own time. How to manage teacher accounts, the Apple Utah webpage, as well as the demo version of the test, so that you can familiarize yourself with the process, as well as encourage your teachers to familiarize yourself with the process if they've never administered the Apple test before. Any Apple help or support, I've also linked some other helpful videos that are there that are provided on YouTube. We will be doing a more in-depth training for Apple on September 15th. So if you know that you are a dual immersion school, you might want to mark your calendar for that. It will be at 2 p.m. until 3. If that time doesn't work for you, the webinar is recorded and it will be posted to our YouTube channel, and so you can always refer back to it. I've included the information for the Apple support team, as well as contact information for the dual language immersion specialist at USBE. His name is Carl Bowman. I am over test administration, and then also Maureen is going to be running the data management for this particular assessment.
Okay, we're going to hit on our formative tools really quickly, and we'll talk a little bit about them right now. One of our formative tools is Utah Compose. It loads through Utricks. Teachers do not add their courses or students. And one thing you need to be aware of is that all grade 3 through 12 teachers have access. And this also includes special education teachers, teachers who do not normally include writing in their curriculum. We strongly encourage them to use Utah Compose to improve writing instruction in your schools. It is provided free. The co-teachers can be added as second teachers on courses if you have co-teachers in your that co-teaching model in your schools. You can also add teachers in teams who they can all add each other so that they can look at data in PLC groups as well. The basic Utah Compose checklist for you is to, if you are new AD or a new school administrator, you need to request a Utah Compose district level admin account or a school admin account. You're going to email me. And once your account's activated, you can review the district and school admin access and accounts. One thing that you'll want to do is deactivate any of your obsolete district and school administrator accounts for your schools. And I will be sending you information about providing the Utah Compose login and how to access information to teachers. And then also you need to make sure that you're verifying your Utricks Utah Compose upload, as well as making sure that they double check for stale uploads and issues like that. One thing you need to be aware of is as an administrator, you cannot create teacher accounts for your teachers. I know we like to do that to be kind, but the process is a little onerous right now. It is going to be changing once Nuisance is up and running. But right now, there is a very specific process that they need to follow. And so unless you want to sit with the social security numbers of your teachers and multiply them, and you know, some people understandably so consider that very private information, I just encourage you to have your teachers register for themselves. If you have any, if they have any issues with trying to register, please have them just reach out and contact me, and I can troubleshoot pretty much any issue with Utricks if you need it.
All right, UTIPS is a formative tool provided for anyone and everyone, basically. It is Utah owned, it is teacher created. There are various item types that you can select from, anything from multi-select to matching, as well as cluster items that would mimic the way that the science tests look, with stimulus and with various questions that relate back to one stimulus. It is available for K through 12. There's an item bank that is available, but also teachers are able to create their own. When you are using UTIPS, it loads through Utricks. Because of this, be aware that it is unavailable usually the first 3 days of school or the beginning of a trimester or semester, as Utricks syncs with the data that's coming through. So just be aware that with that for that sync to occur, the cactus number needs to be there for this, the teacher. The system-wide username has to match your SIS system. You'll need to add the LEA SIS from the drop-down that's there, and the teacher role has to be added. It can't just be a sharing teacher. They need to have their teacher role added so that the data will sync. Just as a heads up with these standards, teachers are going to want to check the standards alignment on the assessments, as multiple assessments still in use don't align to current standards, as standards have been updated over the last few years. And then just as a heads up as well, teachers can no longer create their UTIPS assessments without aligning questions to standards. That's something that they need to do and they need to check. We will have a more in-depth UTIPS training on September 14th. Also from 2 to 3. Again, it will be recorded if that time doesn't work for you. I've included a link here with the UTIPS wiki site, which has lots of frequently asked questions or ways that will help you get things started. If you have any other questions, go ahead and reach out to me.
And we've been completing questions as we've gone on, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on. If anybody has questions, feel free to just type them in or unmute and come off. Hey, Teresa.
Okay, so for PEEP, it's our pre-kindergarten entry and exit profile. So if you are a LEA that is participating in the grant program, it is required. For other LEAs, it is optional as to whether you want to administer the PEEP assessment. Next slide. So it is really intended to analyze the effectiveness of programs. It is administered one-on-one to 4-year-old students in that program. So the entry window is 4 weeks before school starts to 4 weeks after the first day of school. And then all data does have to be entered into Data Gateway through the PEEP platform by September 30th. And then the exit is just the last 4 weeks of school and the data entry by June 15th. Thank you. So all teachers administering the assessment do need that test administration manual and that student materials booklet that students are going to access. They do need to have training and go through. So there's links there to the Canvas course for the entry and exit. And the grant does require that evidence of the training is provided. So there is a certificate that teachers will get at the end of that. Students do need to have a valid SSID number so that they can just within the system itself. So for any private programs, they're manually rostering of students. And for LEA, we are working on getting it rostered through Utricks for students. And I am not sure where we're at with that. So next AD meeting, I will have that final update as to where we're at with that. So we're supposed to find out today, hopefully, but we are moving towards manual, or not manual rostering, but rostering through Utricks. So you would just need to make sure that the preschool data was sent through your Utricks file along with your K through 12 data. They are materials available to be picked up at the USB office. You just need to let me know. And then the Peep Assessment website has lots of materials and information that you can utilize. So if you have questions, the Peep Assessment website is a great place, or you can always email me and I'm happy to help as well. So for the KEEP, that's for kindergarten. And so this is required for kindergarten students, and it is administered one-on-one. And then there are a couple of questions that are administered as a small group to kindergarten students, and you can do a remote administration, and that is available through that link. So that's 3 weeks before school starts to 3 weeks after the first day of school, and that data entry does need to be submitted into the Data Gateway KEEP platform by September 30th. So that's that last 4 weeks of school for the exit, and then data entered by June 15th. So just a couple of reminders with that is that students and teachers do need materials for that. So those can be picked up at the USBE offices again. You do need to make sure teachers have been trained on how to actually give those assessments so that they know what they're looking for and what the requirements are and how it works. And those are Canvas courses. And then you also want to make sure that SIS data is in there correctly in order for students to populate through Utricks to Data Gateway. And assessors do need the correct permissions to enter KEEP data. And that is also for the PEEP, that they have to have that information, that role given to them in order to be able to go into Data Gateway to access student tests and administer those assessments. So you can pick up materials at the USB office. Just let me know that you need them. And then the Keep Assessment website has a lot of resources and information as well. Then for Acadience reading. So this assessment is given required in grades 1 through 3. And then we are also providing funding for kindergarten in grades 4 through 6 if they're in 6th grade, if they're in an elementary school. And most schools are participating with that. So it is administered 3 times a year at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. It is a set of brief measures, and we're just looking to measure early literacy skills. So there are 3 different vendors that people can choose. The ADM, ALO, or Amplify. Okay. For that beginning of year benchmark, it is the beginning of the school year till September 30th, and then the data needs to be entered into the system by October 30th. And then for the middle of year, it's December 1 to January 31, and the data entered by February 28th. And that end of year is that April 15th to June 15th, and then data entered by June 30th. So you can do remote administration for Acadience, and then there is also those alternate assessments that Tracy talked about for the PEEP, the KEEP, and for Acadience reading. So just a couple of requirements that you need to be aware of and make sure that is happening within your LEA. So that they do need to have that reading composite score required for students in grades 1 through 3, and that means they need to have taken all of the Acadience measures that give them that reading composite score, and that data does need to be input within that, that platform system that your school has chosen. Parents do have to be notified after each benchmark of their student's score, and there are parent reports available within every platform that you can print off and then provide for parents. So new this year, diagnostic assessment has to be given to any student who is below grade level. So that is state law. There is a link within the slides for a list that you can look at for diagnostic assessments. It's not an inclusive list. There are other diagnostic assessments out there, but we wanted to provide resources for you. And then you are required to provide interventions to students who are not reading on grade level. So those students who are below or well below, according to those cadence measures, you do need to have some type of intervention system and program in place for those students. And then they do need to receive progress monitoring at the level that they are receiving interventions. So based on where they're at, it does need to be at those levels that Acadience requires, and that there's information within that link as well about what those levels look like. So for making sure that you are ready, making sure those materials are prepared properly for any grades testing, so that their student materials are there for students to access, because there are things that they need to read. Make sure that all staff have those logins and access to the testing platform. And then please make sure they have been trained. You can't give this Acadience reading assessment with any level of fidelity if you have not received training. So there is initial training, and that is for anyone who is brand new to Acadience. And though if you want your staff to do the refresh training, that is for those who have initially been trained. So I did a couple of trainings at the beginning of August, and I had people in there who had lots of experience with Acadience, and they were like, why am I here? So it's really that essentials training, that it's a big 8-hour training, is for people who are new to Acadience and do not have experience with that. And the refresh is better for those who do. For rostering, for Amplifying ADM, it is managed by USBE. Okay, you do need to make sure that that student information is entered properly and completely in the SIS system, and that you're not getting any fatal errors, because if you're getting fatal errors within Utricks, it is not going to upload into the program, and you will not be able to access students. So for ALO, it is managed by the LEA, and you do have to follow that format that's provided by ALO. So you can either roster through Clever or through a file, but they do need to have specific information and formatted a specific way. And then for your data entry, you're going to indicate in the SIS system for every student if a student was below grade level and received intervention. So it's really just like a yes, no, and then you check whether they received interventions. So invalidations, this always comes up if you need to invalidate a test. So there was a problem. You need to inform me that you need to invalidate, and then there's a link to reasons to invalidate. So it is not just because somebody messed up, like you need to really make sure that people know how to use your system and know how to train, so that we're not receiving invalidations for those types of reasons, and that they're the legitimate reasons that are listed on that list. And we will be providing some data analysis trainings, and if your LEA is interested in that, we'll be talking more about that in next week's AD meeting. And then for that online maze benchmark, you need to really pay attention to those benchmark windows, because when it's the benchmark window time, it will open up. And if you go in and don't specifically select progress monitoring, you could give a benchmark maze to a class of students, and we will not go in and invalidate that. That is not a reason for invalidation. That was a test administration error, and that's part of that ethics training, is that you are aware of the policies and rules and procedures. So just make sure you're paying attention to that. And then just some resources for Acadience. So there's some links to the platforms, a link for the student testing materials, and then of course the Acadience Assessment website, which has a lot of information and links to resources and trainings and things like that.
Hey, Gary, you're up.
All right, we'll give it a shot. Acadience Math. There's some similarities between Acadience Reading and Acadience Math, so we'll go through it. I've included here a bunch of resources who can help us with rostering for ALO is one of the questions in the chat. That can be done. There's some information, and actually, I was going to share it now. So one of the resources I've included here is a Getting Started guide. That Getting Started guide actually references ADM. So I've put in the chat the document that is a Getting Started guide for ALO. If you want to use that, we've just barely the last couple days got those finalized, so that's available. Next slide. Here's just some policies around what's required. We often get questions about this, and so just making sure it's clear. For Acadience Math, the benchmarks for grades 1 through 3 are required, but optional are the benchmarks for kindergarten and then any progress monitoring for grades K through 3. One note here, you'll notice a difference between Acadience Reading and Acadience Math. Acadience Reading will go up to grade 6. Here for math, the contract is just up to grade 3. If an LEA is interested in using Acadience Math for grades 4 through 6, contact me and I can get you information to get that set up, but that would be the LEA's responsibility if they're interested. Here's the testing windows. They match Acadience Reading, just so you're aware. And then as far as the data entry windows, I just wanted to call out 2 specific pieces of data that you'll be, or bits of data that you'll be entering. You can see that the data entry windows extend from the testing window by about a month. You have student scores that go into the either ADM or ALO. And then you also have a special codes that will go into your SIS. And so just wanted to call that out, that there's 2 places that you'll be entering data. Next slide. I've provided here a checklist of just preparation for this window that's coming up now when school starts. There is that last piece, just want to call that out, the last kind of check part. As an LEA, you'll want to figure out, we've had, as we've gone through 1 year now with Acadience Math, LEAs are starting to figure out where that might fall, and this has been brought up by multiple assessments as well, is just making sure it's clear where does Acadience Math fall, who's going to be the point person for that, or the system administrator. Sometimes it's in assessment, sometimes it's in curriculum, and so just making sure that's clear, because we'll send out communications and we want to make sure the right people are involved. Next. And similar to what Teresa was sharing, there is information as far as the trainings that are available. The Essentials Workshop, we've been providing a few. We have one more on August 24th, and I've included information in the notes on this slide. So you have information about the training on the 24th. If there is a need for that, the Essentials Workshop, you can contact me and we can work with individual LEAs to get that taken care of. You can see also the optional training. There is a refresher Canvas course and information is provided there. The data interpretation, there are dates in the notes, but we've had some requests to move those dates to a sooner time to be closer to the end of the data entry window. So for data interpretation training, if you're marking down those dates, just for now it's to be determined, and we'll share those dates at the AD meeting next week. And that's it. If there's any questions, please let me know. I'm not seeing anything else, so thank you.
All right, for RISE is provided for students who are in grades 3 through 8. The assessment itself is available for ELA and math for all of those grades. Writing is only assessed in 2 of the grades, 5th grade, and 8th grade. And then we add science in 4th grade. There's 4 different types of assessments provided in the RISE platform. There are training tests, benchmark modules, which are optional, the interim assessments for ELA and math, which are also optional, and then the summative assessments that happen in the spring or possibly winter for some of our math classes. The optional benchmark modules and interim assessments will be available on these days. You can see that the benchmark modules are actually already open. They opened August 1st, and they basically will go through June 9th with the exception of a moratorium during the winter holiday break. Interims are very similar. They opened August 1st and will continue through March 4th with the exception of that winter holiday break moratorium, and all interims must be submitted by the end of the day on March 4th before that window closes. The RISE summative window this year, the mid-summative window will open November 1st and go through December 23rd, again opening January 3rd through March 3rd of next year. The spring summative window will open March 14th and go through June 9th of 2023. And then you've got your 8 consecutive weeks to choose for completion. Just as a friendly reminder though, please do not test during the last week of school if at all possible. For RISE help and support, always watch for those AD memos for any updates. We will have a RISE training, 2 parts that happen September 22nd. We're going to go over just some basics, intro type things from 9 to 10 a.m. and then we'll do a comprehensive training following that from 10 a.m. to noon.
Thanks. We're going to go ahead and move into secondary assessments. So if you are an LEA who doesn't administer statewide assessments to grades 9, 12, mainly it's charter schools who only go through for 8th grade, you are excused or you can stay on and work with us. We look forward to working with you this year. So we're going to go.
All right, we are going to talk a little bit about the Utah Core Standards for high school benchmarks. These are available for students enrolled in assessment generating courses. And so they are course-based and it's a formative assessment tool. We have them available for ELA, math, and science courses. They're about 7 to 15 questions each. You can search them in Pearson by standard or strand, and they can be taken as many times as teachers desire throughout the year. Scores are not reported back to the state. This is for local use only. They are currently open and available and will be through June 30th of next year. The available testlets are listed here. There are multiple testlets for each standard, but this gives you an idea of which courses will generate those testlets if you choose to use them or if schools that you work with choose to use them. As a heads up, the rostering for these tests is based on course enrollment in Utricks. So for example, if I'm a student who has biology, English 10, and secondary math 10, I'm automatically going to be rostered in any available testlet for those courses. And then my teacher can go in and choose to assign those if they choose to. Again, these are optional. We will have a training for the high school benchmarks. It will also be a 2-part training on September 29th. We'll start with basics from 9 to 10 a.m. and then go more comprehensive from 10 a.m. to noon. Again, all of these will be recorded and posted on the YouTube channel for future reference or if you are unable to attend. I've included links here for help desk and support through Pearson, as well as my own email account there. And then for the Utah Aspire Plus testing, this is the end of grade level assessment that all 9th and 10th graders will complete. It's fixed form, so it's not adaptive. And there's a 9th grade form and there is a 10th grade form. Students are going to be preloaded into grade level content testing sessions. Okay, these are timed. I've listed the times that are for you. Generally speaking, this is administered like a battery test, similar to ACT, back to back to back to back to back. Okay, the Utah Aspire Plus items, just so that you're aware, it's a hybrid test based on Utah Test Bank items as well as ACT Aspire items. The reason that we can use those ACT Aspire items is so that we can get the predictive score for the ACT test. And then it allows you to also measure growth between 9th and 10th grade. The Utah Aspire Plus window for the next spring administration is going to be March 6th through May 12th. For rostering, students are automatically going to be rostered here through Utricks as well, but you need to pay close attention to dually enrolled schools, as tie-break rules can be really tricky with these kiddos who are enrolled in multiple schools, whether it be online or brick and mortar. And so if you have rostering questions, again, that's where you're going to reach out to Maureen and we can help you with those. I included the same links here for help with Utah Aspire Plus. If you have any questions, just reach out and let us know.
Jessica, you're up.
Sorry, I wasn't off mute. So for the Utah Aspire Plus accommodations, our test administration manual will be updated later this year, but you can go into the Utah Aspire Plus Resource Center and access the one we had last year. There's not going to be significant changes. So if you just want to familiarize yourself with what the TAM looks like for the UA Plus, it is there on the resources and training site. And if you go down to the administration and manuals tab, you will find that PDF file there. Next. And if you want to familiarize yourself with how you will input the Utah Aspire Plus accommodations, there is also a video that's been recorded from Pearson, from Tyler Hicks, that's still relevant, and it is on that resources and trainings tab down underneath the test administration training, and it's the last tab on there that you can currently access. Next. So there's no deadlines for the UA Plus accommodations. However, as Tracy Gooley mentioned earlier, there are certain accommodations that you will have to put in an accommodation request form. For example, if you need a Braille form, you're going to be cognizant of those needs of your students. So those are conversations you should be having with your special education director. Look at those accommodation request forms. Look at those special requests. Be communicating with your special education director, your 504 coordinator, and thinking about, are there any requests that you're going to need to submit early, and don't wait to the last minute to get that completed in the spring. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at any time. Scott Ross Kelly is our ACT project manager. He's not here today, so I'm going to briefly review some ACT information, and we'll go into more details next week at our regular AD meeting. So our 11th grade students in the state of Utah participate in the ACT. They do the English, reading, and math and science, no writing. Homeschool students who would be juniors can also participate in this. One thing to note, I know most districts seem to have been moving to the online platform, but ACT is going to be moving away from paper forms. So I would really strongly encourage you to take the opportunity to move to online if you haven't done so already. Our feedback from districts is always positive. There's less administrations when this happens. There's more flexibility in the testing dates and windows. So consideration for that. Next. So here are ACT test dates. The paper test has 3 windows, and the online test has 3 windows. Just note that if you do opt to take the paper test this year, try not to use that last administration date because you're not going to have room for makeup testing. The ACT is very strict with their procedures, but they have really great support and resources to help you throughout the year. Any violation of their standards will invalidate scores. The ACT, one thing that is strict with them with their dates is the submission of their accommodations request. Kim, if you'll go to the next slide. We do have our first accommodations training coming up on September 8th. It will be recorded if you can't make that time frame. We tried to coordinate it with times that would work for after school time, but we'll record it and post it. And then the Test Accessibility Accommodation System, our TA, opens early September 12th. Many LEAs wait until the last minute to submit accommodations, which our due date for this testing season is January 20th of 2023. However, I would strongly encourage you to incorporate submitting those requests maybe in batches or throughout the late fall, early January. Don't wait until the last minute, because if you don't get those requests in, there's no exceptions with ACT. I can't do anything for you to help you, but at least if you get that request in there, even if you made an error, we can then move forth and try to work around that. When you do submit ACT accommodations, there has to be a consent to release information to ACT that has to be on file for all students. So make certain you have that signed before you share any information with ACT. Okay, and that's just, going over what I've already gone over. Here's some important information for things that I'm trying to rush through since we're running out of time at noon. For more resources for the ACT, again, Scott Ross Kelly is your main contact. You can send him email or myself, and we'll be happy to respond to you. And go to the next page. And then this is if you have ACT specific accommodations or questions, that's a direct phone number and email if you need to email them, or you can also email me. I'll be happy to assist you. Okay, and then I just want to briefly talk about our advanced placement exams that are offered in the state through the College Board. There is also a strict deadline for accommodations for students who are requesting accommodations if they have a IEP or a 504 plan. And for this testing season, it's January 18th. Just like the ACT, there's a parent consent form that must be filled out before you share any information with the College Board. And go to the next page. And Christy Schreck is our AP specialist at USBE. If you have any questions, you can reach out to her or myself. Good, next. Okay, so Schmoop is a platform that we have as our ACT exam prep in the state. Again, Scott Ross Kelly is our project manager over this at the state. We have an upcoming training for this next week, and it'll go over how to use Schmoop, how to access it in our state. Go to the next one. And if you want to register for that training, you can email Autumn Ackerman, and she is works at Schmoop, and will get you set up for that. If you are an older, okay, go ahead. That's it.
Thanks, everybody. One thing we just wanted to let you know, if you have any questions, please make sure you type them in the chat. We have about 7 minutes left. If you have any questions about anything that we've covered today. One thing we do want to remind you of is next week's AD meeting that starts at 9 o'clock on Thursday. Some of the information we've covered today, you'll see again. So if you're feeling a little like Darren and I joke about being fire hosed today, some of this will make a little bit more sense to you as you have time to think about it. But we strongly urge you to make sure that you review the PDF of the slideshow, put in the dates with the correct year, of course, and then just make sure that you're aware or prepare some questions if you have any for next week's meeting. Next week, we'll have all of the assessment directors either in person or online. And oftentimes during that meeting, we have them also share tips and tricks that they may be able to provide you as well. So we just really appreciate your attention today. Is there anything new in the chat? I can't see it. So if there is anything, Emily, will you let me know? Okay, great. And please remember that all of our contact information is linked throughout the PowerPoint. So you're welcome to go ahead and email me. I notice I've been receiving a lot of emails about our Compose accounts. So thank you for that. And we will be responding back to anybody who had any of those questions. So thank you again for your attention and your participation. And we will see you next Thursday and throughout the year. Thank you so much.